do a new share with the PowerPoint. Okay. How's everyone doing, by the way, before we get started? You guys doing okay? You stressed? You seem pretty non-stressed at the moment. Doing okay? Okay, well, that's good. I was much more stressed last week than I am today. Well, Chapter 7 deals with media as entertainment, which is my favorite form of the media, frankly. I love movies and TV and all forms of entertainment through the media. I'm a news junkie, but I don't know if I had to choose between the news or choose between my Netflix, which I'd choose. But this chapter deals with entertainment. There are several learning objectives to this chapter. Basically, one of the things that it talks about is consumer demands and how the consumer demand for entertainment changed journalism. One of the things that's really fascinating is that when Edward R. Murrow helped to create broadcast journalism for television, first he did it for radio, then for TV, it was not expected to make money. It was a public service. And then 60 Minutes came along many years ago and turned a profit. And then next thing you know, all news had to turn a profit. That changed the nature of news. We'll talk a little bit about that. Technology, changes entertainment mediums, that kind of thing, how it affects the messages. And we're going to talk about different trends. Technology has changed the music industry a lot. I'm not going to read all of these to you, just hit some of the highlights. Mass media really popularized sports. That's a really important concept in this chapter. In the early 1900s, sports probably wouldn't be what it is today if it weren't for the mass medium. I mean, football owns at least 2 days of the week, right? They own Sunday, they own Monday night, and sometimes Thursday night. And so sports has really become one of the most significant things in our culture, and because of the mass media. There's a discussion here about obscenity and pornography and kind of adult entertainment that's in the media. The Supreme Court does not protect obscenity, but pornography is protected. So there's a difference between pornography and obscenity. At the gist of it, it's very complicated, and this class really isn't about media law, but at the gist of it is there's some redeeming value according to the law in pornography. Something like Playboy magazine had articles. Obscenity is something that's just obsessively appeals to the purient interest and therefore has no redeeming value, so it's not protected. There's an idea of certain media that are culturally significant and other that's sort of more demeaning type media. And then we talk a little bit about pop art and what that's about in this chapter. So your chapter begins with the saga of Princess Diana. It's really hard to believe it's been a very long time since she died. And we all, I think, know how she died. She was in not a car, but some kind of vehicle with her boyfriend, and she was being driven, and the paparazzi were following her. And they decided they wanted to try to lose the paparazzi, so they were speeding, going too fast. And then the driver, who, I don't know if he was inebriated or not, but there was some discussion that maybe he shouldn't have been driving. I really haven't investigated that, but he had an accident and she died, as did Dodi Al-Fayed, who she was with. And there's a lot of discussion that basically the media killed Princess Diana. I'm curious, why do you think the paparazzi hound certain people like that? Why do you think they do it? Yeah.
That they can make money.
Oh yeah, there's money in it. Sadly to say, you can sell photographs to a lot of money to the tabloids. So there's money in it, which means, are we partially to blame? Yes. Maybe not us individually if we don't buy those magazines, but the public in general. And maybe we are. So I think that the fact that there's a consumer interest in celebrities that's at a incredible high level causes these things to happen. Yes.
Have you seen the movie, or I guess like the book too, the like Red Circle movie?
No.
It's like basically it's about kind of like a future in which like social media and stuff kind of controls like everybody's lives more or less. And you can kind of like sign up to basically have like your whole life be like live streamed essentially. And towards the end, you know, you find out that like everything's being uploaded to the government, you know, and they're watching everything and stuff.
Is that and, Emma Watson?
Mm-hmm. And the media ends up driving this guy who doesn't want to be a part of, you know, like social media and having his whole life be, you know, streamed for everybody to see, end up driving him to end up dying. So
Wow.
it's kind of crazy how it happens, but it's not similar to that.
I'll have to watch it. I think it's out on Prime, maybe. I think I've seen it. Maybe it's on HBO. I'm not sure which. But I haven't seen the movie. I've seen that it's available, so I'll have to watch it now. There was a movie a few years ago, a little less dramatic than that, but Ed TV, where the guy's whole life was put on television for everyone to watch. There's also a very interesting movie. Have you guys seen the movie The Queen? If you're a PR major, anybody here a PR major? I think you ought to watch that if you get a chance, because it's a great PR movie in that here you have the Queen of England, and we're digressing just a little bit, but it is related. The Queen of England, one of the most popular queens to ever sit on a crown. Princess Diana dies, and in 1 week period, because she can't quite read the temperature of the people, and that she's stuck in tradition and she can't see how things are perceived, they want to kick her off the throne. It's the most amazing, it's a really, really well done movie. Helen Mirren plays the queen, but it's all about public perception. And eventually she comes around and she makes a public apology, which, you know, Royal Highness doesn't do that kind of thing. But she ends up kind of eventually following the advice of Tony Blair and reaching out to her people. And eventually, you know, she does it enough that they forgive her. I don't know if you guys saw Princess Diana's funeral or clips of it. But there's a moment when the casket is being taken to the cathedral and the Queen curtsies and bows to the casket. That's just not done. And so those kind of things win her back in favor. But it's a really good PR study on, you know, how to, you know, you can have this great decades of service and record and be beloved in 1 week, you can lose it all. So it's an interesting movie. I'd love to just have a class on movies. When I was at another school, I taught a class on the political rhetoric of film, and we would watch a movie 1 week and then we would talk about how those historical moments changed language. That was a really fun class. Entertainment is, of course, a mass media, and it's a part of various mediums that we've talked about before. One of the things that you have to be careful about, and we were just talking about Princess Diana, is the notion of stalking people or spying on people. This day and age with iPhones and with drones and different things, it's much easier to invade somebody's privacy. We're talking about that in my media law class right now, the invasion of privacy. And one of the things you want to be careful is that you're not invading people's privacy for news coverage or for entertainment purposes. But it's much more a part of our culture. The show Big Brother is kind of an example of, we're a voyeuristic society where we watch people come together on a TV show and they act a certain way. And a lot of that is kind of probably a little more scripted than they let on. Even if there's not a script, they probably talk about who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. But still, the notion that we watch that, I've even found myself guilty of this. I don't know why, but I have, who's the lady on King of Queens that played his wife?
Leah Remini.
Yeah, she had a show a few years ago. It was just Leah Remini and her family, and they just followed them around. And I watched the first, I think there were 2 seasons of that show, and all you're doing is watching them live. It's kind of a strange thing. I think Survivor's a little bit like that, although there's a competition. Why are we voyeuristic about that? Why do we care? I understand why the medium do it, because it makes money and you don't have to pay a bunch of stars. Why do we do that? Why do we watch that kind of thing? Any ideas? Do you watch anything like that? I think I watched Leah Remini because I liked her in the show King of Queens, and she's kind of a funny person in real life. She kind of, how she was in King of Queens was very much how she was in real life, or at least seemed to be on TV. I just kind of enjoyed watching it. You guys have a show like that you watch? Maybe you don't. Maybe you guys are more mature than I am. That's very possible. But why do you think they're a hit with society then?
I think it is fascinating watching with some people. With even and if you can kind of tell your audience, oh, this is all real, even though it might not be.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of entertainment in that.
Especially like if it's a celebrity, like you kind of just like want to see like the way they live, like especially like with some movies that you get like so involved that you can almost like see yourself like that character.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people watch and be like, I wonder what it'd be like if I was in that position. Like I wonder what her family's like. Because like you only see what's on the surface, but when they have those TV shows like that, you're like, okay, you can see what's behind there, even if it is still fake. You want to believe that's true.
Yeah. I think that's been true with a lot of different shows. Like, it's been off the air for a few years now, but the show with the family that had 7 kids and, wanted to see how they were raising their kid. Maybe it's Kate plus 8. Yeah. And then they had, I still don't quite understand the appeal because I'm old, of like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, because that kind of, I'll watch a movie and enjoy fake romance, but I don't know, it just seems so weird to have fake romance and in 16 weeks we're going to be in love. But they must be very popular shows. And I confess, I watch similar shows. I just, I'll be more inclined to watch false romance via Hallmark than I do The Bachelorette. But that's some of the trends in entertainment today. Is once they found out people would watch that, well, you don't have to pay a Jerry Seinfeld or name the person a ton of money. You can pay somebody who's more normal, or somebody like you and me, and people will sit around and watch them. So it's a lot cheaper. Episodes also can go viral. Some of these things can really be a big deal. So entertainment in the 21st century is really versatile in a way it hasn't been before. Technology drives entertainment just like it's driven everything else we've talked about. Technology made books possible to the masses. Technology changed the way newspapers were printed and then distributed, then changed the whole value system of newspapers. So technology kind of changes everything. And so it affects storytelling. And it affects music and sports. Anybody in here sports fans? Any sports fans? I'm a huge sports fan. I don't know. And so sports has become a big part of our culture. So You know, last night I watched the Chiefs play. It was a very boring game last night, but sports is such a big part of our culture, and it seems a little bit out of proportion to our values as Americans in some way. We almost value sports more than anything. Slight exaggeration, but you could argue maybe that our sports team shouldn't be playing right now, right? Is it safe to play football? Cam Newton, the quarterback of the New England Patriots, got COVID, so he didn't play. They are taking a lot of precautions. But if the NFL didn't play right now, billions of dollars would be lost in revenue to these teams. Maybe millions, but I think it's more like billions. And so it's interesting to me how important sports has become in our culture. And arguably, you can almost argue it's not the single most important thing. On television, it appears to be. And so, I don't know, where does sports rank with other things like religion or, I don't know, charity, or, you know, do you guys think sports is king in America?
It's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's hard to say which one's more valued, right? Because you can turn the TV station, radio station, podcast, and find religion and science and other things all over the place too.
There's like people who even like, they'll like skip going to church so they can like set up for like their football party or something like that. They just,
You know, I'm a little bit joking, mostly serious. I think the Monday after the Super Bowl ought to be a national holiday, so that you can stay up and watch it. I stay up and watch it anyway. I'm just tired that next Monday and go to work. But yeah, people, and I admit I'm kind of crazy myself, so I'm guilty of a lot of these same trends. What's interesting today, because of social media and other things at our disposal, is how quickly there can be feedback. The other night, not last night, but the week before when the Chiefs played, I was watching the game, and the announcer of the game kept calling the Chiefs quarterback Pat. His name is Patrick Mahomes. And they kept saying, well, you know, Pat did a good job there. Pat threw a touchdown there. Pat. And about halfway through the game, his mom tweeted, please stop calling my son Pat. His name is Patrick. And so next thing you know, they did a little segment on the TV. They're like, we're really sorry. And they started calling Patrick again. That's the kind of feedback that's you wouldn't have had, 20 years ago. So one of the things that's interesting is that the mass media does take into account the audience's response to what they're producing, because if you don't want to see it, then they're going to produce something else. So audience and performance are really connected. That's why sometimes too TV shows get canceled. Sometimes they get canceled before they should. There's some really famous TV shows that many years, that today might have been canceled, but many years ago they were given a little bit of a chance to develop, and so they became hit shows. Again, technology provides that almost instantaneous feedback. What was interesting, we talked about the presidential debate. What was interesting was the amount of response people got after the debate in terms of social media and that kind of thing. So one big part of entertainment media is this notion of storytelling. And when you guys study film, one of the things that you're looking at is what's the story that the film is telling. And when you're doing your treatment, you're thinking about storytelling. And so storytelling is a part of the media, whether you're talking about the news, you're talking about radio, television, movies. And so there's a variety of different literature that can show us, what great stories are, but sometimes we can bring those to the mass medium as well. There are some different media-defined trends that you'll see in literature, and then you'll see in movies and other, maybe a TV sitcom or a drama on TV, made-for-TV movie. These are some of the media-defined trends. You might see that a character in a movie or a book or a TV show has a rise in popularity and then a fall. And sometimes a redemption. So you're popular, you fall, then you're redeemed. But that's a very, very popular trend, rise and fall in popularity. Who can name a movie or TV show that depicts that trend of a character? Rise and fall in popularity. Maybe even, again, a redemption. You think of anything?
Like how it affected the ratings?
Well, no, just kind of the storyline. These are just kind of the notions of, this is one of the popular storylines in storytelling that you see throughout. What's an example of a rise and fall? We see some of that in Star Wars, don't we? With, the Jedi, first the Empire Strikes Back, and there, throughout there you see Anakin Skywalker is a hero, then he becomes Darth Vader, then he becomes a good guy again right before he dies. And so you see a lot of that kind of, I'm just wanting you to think more about different stories that you've seen, and it's really replete throughout movies. The buddy films, the whole notion of relationships is a very common genre of literature and entertainment. And there's just countless number of buddy films. And then there's different audience and market driven trends of things that might be hot now, won't be hot 20 years from now, that kind of thing. Whatever's going on and interesting now. One example of that I can think of is a few years ago, I can't remember the name of the film now, but there was a movie about the guy who was in love with his Alexa or whatever. What? Yes, because he could hear her voice, and it was really just a computer-generated voice. That's something that was interesting at that time, because computer-generated talking, voice, that kind of thing is new. Probably won't see a movie like that. Well, we didn't see it before it was possible, but that kind of thing, that there are certain trends going on that affect the storylines. Music is one of the most impactful aspects of our society. It's really transformative on us in many, many ways. It's integrated into a lot of our media, so sometimes we don't think about it. In the 1980s, there was a TV show, Miami Vice. I don't know if you guys have seen that show on reruns anywhere. It's a really old show with Don Johnson as a detective. But it was a show that really integrated soundtracks into television shows in a way that wasn't done to that extent. If you watched older movies or older TV shows before that, there might be music, like when the bad guy enters, you hear a dun dun dun. But in Miami Vice, it was almost like one big music video with a little bit of dialogue. And that became very, very popular. Now, music is such a vital part of the movies and can help set the tone and can help really foreshadow what's going to happen. So it's really integrated into all of our media. It's a big part of our advertisements. And I can't even imagine now going to a movie and only hearing dialogue. Even only hearing sound effects, the songs really make a huge difference. Your book talks a little bit about different kinds of revolutions in rock music, and the rockabilly, There's music that's often associated with African-American sounds. They're like jazz and that kind of sound. Hillbilly music, that's a little derogatory term, but that's basically country music. And talking about different revolutions within them as kind of offshoots. Country music today, you still have the kind of twangy country music, but you have a lot of country music that has crossed into almost popular culture country music too. And so the book talks about kind of different genres of music. Who's Sam Phillips? Anybody know? That's okay. He's in the chapter. But I understand this time you may be studying for other tests right now. Sam Phillips is a record producer, and Elvis Presley, I think we all know who Elvis is. Elvis was quite a sensation in rock and roll when he first broke out in the 1950s. He was sort of, his music was unique, but then his gyrations on stage, his dancing around, the things that made him such a great entertainer, in addition to having a great voice, really kind of freaked out people. And when he was first on television, they would shoot him from the waist up so people couldn't see him shaking his legs and stuff like that. It seems silly by today's standards because it's so tame compared to some of the stuff we see today. But it wasn't back then. Elvis was truly revolutionary. Music also has been used to peacefully protest or dissent different things. The war is one thing. Vietnam War, there was a lot of anti-war music during the Vietnam War. That war just kind of drug on and on and on. And so there was a lot of music and political messages against the war that we still have anti-war messages on occasion, but during Vietnam, it was very popular. And then we have sort of the rise of rap. Where does rap stand today? Is it still pretty viable? Is it still, you guys listen to rap? Yeah.
I still think it's probably the genre that makes the most money nowadays.
I
don't even think really.
I think it does too. And I
Besides
think,
maybe country, but I think it probably makes money country.
but it rose and it's still up there pretty high. It has a pretty strong following still. And so what's the appeal of rap music?
Probably more of like the lyrical side of it.
Okay, the lyrics, okay.
Along with like, just like upbeat, like instrumentals and stuff like that.
Okay. I would say the lyrics are probably the thing that make all music, regardless of genre, because if you don't have good lyrics, you know, the melody doesn't sound. But I also think the other things that you mentioned, you know, the beats and that kind of thing help make it kind of more lively and make it, rap is a very personal kind of music. Sports is something that we've already kind of talked a little bit about how important it is. There are a lot of different sports magazines that have cropped up, sports on television, sports and newspapers are big. One of my favorite shows that's been off the air for a while is Everybody Loves Raymond. And I always thought Raymond had the best job in the world because he was a sports columnist for a New York newspaper. I'd love to be a sports columnist. I mean, I'm going to keep my day job, but I think that would be a lot of fun. And so there's different examples in your book of where sports coverage has been huge. And sort of, there was all these different genres where it's really been big, but it's big in newspapers and magazines and television. One of the recent trends that's interesting about sports is the notion of sponsorships and advertising. that now most of the stadiums are built and sponsored by, you know, Cheetos or different Tostitos, different companies. And so sponsorships have kind of taken over a lot of the sporting events and sporting locations. The Super Bowl has become a really big moneymaker. It changes every year, but millions of dollars for like a 30-second TV commercial. And so audience and advertisers have really had confluence over these sponsorships and then these big Super Bowl ads. You know, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said, I don't really watch the game, but I watch the Super Bowl ads, I could probably retire. I watch both. I like the ads. I think they're great. Although in recent years, I don't know if they're as good as they were. But you can see a real influence of that in the football area. Televised sports has become huge in terms of audiences. And there are several different business models in your book. One of the things that's interesting is, don't mean to keep bringing the Chiefs up, but they were supposed to play Sunday, and then Cam Newton got COVID, and then the quarterback for the Chiefs practice squad got COVID, and they tested everybody, and those two people were quarantined, but they didn't want to play a game if anybody else got it. So they postponed the Sunday game until last night. And there was already a Monday night game. So then it's like, when do you schedule it? You can't have them competing for different dollars. And so they scheduled it on one network before the other one was broadcast. And so televised sports is gigantic business. And if the NFL had not had its season this year, it probably would have had a tremendous deficit on the economy. Your book talks a little bit about sexual content in the media, and adult entertainment is a form of it. There's a lack of data on some of the things about, you know, who watches these and some of that, because some people don't own up to watching these different things. But obviously there's a market. Some people do watch adult movies. There have been some studies on the effects of pornography and things like that on people and whether or not, what it does to them. When Ted Bundy was getting ready to be executed, he was I hate to say people who watch these movies are like serial killers. I'm not saying that. That was a weird segue, but Ted Bundy was interviewed, and he did tell the interviewer right before he was killed that he watched a lot of pornography, and it probably caused him to not respect women, and that might be why he killed as many women as he did. I also felt like he was kind of manipulating the media at the end and was going to just say whatever he wanted to. That may or may not have been true. But there have been a lot of studies about the sociological impact of adult movies and pornography. There are some decency requirements. The movies, for instance, are one of the few instances where the media has decided to kind of censor itself because they didn't want other people to censor them. And they did that through a rating system. So a G movie is family oriented, and PG and R and so on. And so there have been periods throughout American history where censorship has been imposed on the movies. And there's been a whole debate about that. So the movie industry just said, we're going to tell people, you know, what's the content of the movies. And then if they don't want to come see an R or X-rated movie, they don't have to. And that has pretty much helped with most of the censorship. There is this ongoing debate between obscenity and pornography. And again, the court kind of struggles with this. There's a famous quote from Justice Potter Stewart. He said, you know, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And so it's really hard to make distinctions. But I think the notion is if there's any kind of artistic value in an art, in an adult type movie, the artistic value would make it pornography. If it's something that is just so without any redeeming value, it's considered obscenity. Now, the question is who gets to decide that? Who's redeeming value? So there have been arguments about decency related to the movies since they began, really. Sexual content in children, there is stronger laws about protecting children so they're not exploited in any kind of sexually content kind of movie or anything like that. So children are protected and you can't exploit them in filmmaking. If you do, you'll get in trouble. And so the broadcasting of children is something there's quite a few protections against. And so there's a protection in the law for those. So one of the things that people sometimes argue about is, you know, what is kind of high art and what's low art and what's in the middle. And it used to be that television was definitely seen as low art. And if you were a real artist, you want to be in the film, you want to be in film. I think that's changed a little bit in the 21st century. It's probably still true that people would prefer to be in motion pictures for the big screen, but they're, especially through HBO, Showtime, some other specialized channel, even Netflix or Prime that make their own movies, their own content, that I think there's less snobbery about television being low art. You know, I think we know high art, middlebrow art, lowbrow art. That's kind of a snobbery depiction of, you know, what is worthwhile, what's not. That might be a little bit in the beholder. Like I said, probably 20 years ago, television was seen as lesser than. I don't know if that's true now. Netflix has been nominated for multiple Emmys, and I'm pretty sure they've won some. I mean, I don't know how many. Does anybody know that? Hey, will you Google that for us? How many Emmys has Netflix won? Back a few years ago, they came out with a documentary called The 13th on the history of the 13th Amendment. Yeah.
37.
They've won 37. Wow. So a few years ago, they came out with a documentary on the history of the 13th Amendment, which eradicated slavery. And it's a really good documentary, and it was the first Netflix original to be nominated. And then since then, they've made so many original shows that they're nominated all the time. 37, that's a lot. So I think the idea of what's high art and low art changes over time. It's amorphous, I think. So what is pop art? Did you guys, hopefully you guys, some of you guys read the chapter or you have some notion. What's pop art? It's kind of art in the popular culture, right? So it's art that's more popularized, maybe less highbrow, but the notion that today I think we're kind of looking at popular art a little differently. Again, I think some of the distinctions that used to be made have been modified slightly. Again, that's kind of can change over time, change depending upon new values of culture, things like that. So we went through chapter 7 pretty quickly, but I think we also kind of get the point about how technology has changed a lot of things about entertainment. Entertainment has helped mediated things between audiences. Storytelling plays a huge part in entertainment, which is, again, while you're doing a film treatment, it's all about storytelling, music, sports. Sex is used as media content, sometimes not even in like pornographic or obscene materials, but you know, you can't watch an episode of Friends where sex isn't mentioned, or name a show. And then there's a a discussion in the book about artistic values. You have any questions about that? What I thought I would do Thursday, since we did get through this, I thought that I would go through the 3 topics of recorded music, radio, and film, and maybe do like an in-class sort of help with reviewing some of the big topics to get you ready for the test. So we're not going to have a new reading. I think I'm going to go through and just do kind of like a little review. You need to do your own study guides, but I thought if we talked about certain things to study in class, that maybe it would help you in the performance of the test. I thought maybe we'd do that. So we'll do that Thursday. Any questions? Okay, hold on a second. I'm gonna turn off the recording and I'll come clean your seats.